Hey folks, I just want to weigh in on something that has been kind of making the rounds in the jiu-jitsu and MMA community. I know Rose Namajunas tweeted out something about it. I think she may put it on Instagram. Should cops have to learn jiu-jitsu? Should jiu-jitsu be part of police training? With all the police brutality we're seeing and the protests across the country, that's something that's come up a bit in the martial arts community. And there are two sides to it to me. There's the practical, tactical side, and then there's the more emotional side, the character side that I would see. Starting off tactically, LAPD's police academy lasts 6 months. If you did jiu-jitsu an hour a day, every day for 6 months, you would learn the basics. Maybe. You're in white belt territory. You don't know what you're doing. In fact, you might know just enough to just do it terribly. So just the time frame. People don't realize a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, depending on what team you're with and how strict your instructor is 2 to 3 years, 2 to 4, I guess, to get your blue. If you don't have any other background in wrestling or judo or sambo or something like that, it takes a while to get. And that's training an hour a day every day, 5 days a week. So the time frame of people don't realize, hey, teach them jiu-jitsu. Well, how much jiu-jitsu are you supposed to learn in the time you're becoming a cop? 6 months just is not going to do it, right? So that's the practical side of it is people don't realize how long it takes to get a jiu-jitsu blue belt. And, are you going to wait? Are you going to say you can't become a cop until you get a blue belt? And it's going to make you go through a 3-year training period in order to do that? Like it's practically extremely difficult to work out. Cops learn chokes. They learn some form of jiu-jitsu. They learn to restrain people. They're not great at it because there's a lot of stuff they have to learn while in police academy. It isn't all about how to hold somebody down and all this stuff and get their hands around their back and the choke holds. They don't learn all this stuff. They learn a little bit of it, but how much time do they expect to devote to it? Also, the idea that this stuff is misapplied implies that a bad choke is more dangerous than a good choke. All chokes are dangerous. That's the whole point. A good rear naked choke from a black belt will just put you out faster. It's just harder to escape. It's not going to be any safer. The idea that, these people are dying in police custody because the cops don't know how to do what they're doing. Even an expert doing what they're doing, chokes are inherently dangerous. And so the only thing you could learn is how to apply it in a way that would put somebody out faster and quicker, but that doesn't necessarily make it any safer. And in the hands of somebody who barely knows what they're doing, 6 months of training, I don't see that as a benefit. So the other side of it is, once again, the character side of would someone who knew jiu-jitsu be more relaxed in these situations, not panic, and when it kind of cross the line. I have two answers to that, in my opinion. There's a thing going around with Matt Serra. I was there in Vegas when this drunk guy, I wasn't at that event, but I was in Vegas calling a fight, when he had an issue with some drunk guy who got out of hand in Vegas, and Matt Serra got mad on him and just held the guy's hands. So there's this thing going around that showed Matt Serra in that position and said, this is a trained jiu-jitsu black belt. And then it showed a cop just beating somebody up or something, flopping around. And it said, this is a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. This is why cops need to learn jiu-jitsu. Matt didn't want to hurt the guy. It's not about Matt's skill level. Of course, he's an incredibly skilled black belt, but he was just like laughing and goofing around the guy, like, hey, dude, calm down or whatever. He didn't want to hurt him. If Matt wanted to hurt him, he would have put him in a hospital. He has the skill to do that. Those skills happen to have been placed in someone or learned by someone who doesn't want to abuse them. That's the heart of the issue. There's a great documentary called Return with Honor about these pilots who were shot down over North Vietnam and ended up in as prisoners of war, and they were tortured and all the stuff they went through. And this one guy says, he goes, to get through flight school, to be a pilot, you had to be resourceful, you had to be intelligent, you had to be determined, all these things to get through flight school. But once you're through that, we have the normal cross-section of humanity. He said, one guy told me I can't stand unpleasantness, let alone torture. That interrogator slams his fist on the table and I just shrivel up inside. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Guys, I've been in jiu-jitsu 20 years. I know jiu-jitsu black belts who are horrible people. Petty, vain, racist, vindictive, savage. Any bad personality trait, I can point out a jiu-jitsu black belt who's like that, who's awful. It doesn't make you a better person if you're not open to that lesson. I know a lot of people have learned a lot of personal lessons from jiu-jitsu and martial arts, and I have personally, but I can't take a terrible person, teach them jiu-jitsu, and they won't abuse that. That's a character flaw that jiu-jitsu is not going to fix, primarily and especially if they're forced to be there. My dad had to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. He got arrested for drunk driving. They made him go to AA. My dad sat in a chair for 2 weeks and didn't say a word to anybody. They went around, I'm so-and-so, I'm alcoholic. My dad didn't stand up. He sat there. Why? Because I have to be here. I didn't want to go to AA. I don't believe I'm alcoholic. I don't believe I have a problem. I'm great. Now, Alcoholics Anonymous has changed a lot of people's lives. My dad was not open to that, couldn't care less. So he sat there. You can make a cop a blue belt by making him sit through jiu-jitsu class an hour a day for 4 days a week, 5 days a week for 3 years. If he's not going there to learn something about himself or something, he's not going to. No one is going to. So, plenty of people who are skilled in jiu-jitsu, it didn't make them better decision makers, right? BJ Penn has been getting in street fights for 20 years. A lot of people didn't necessarily hear about it, but trust me, I was hearing stories 20 years ago about stuff he was doing. Knucklehead shit in the street, probably the most decorated jiu-jitsu artist of all time from the United States. And, War Machine, famously, obviously, jiu-jitsu brown belt. Dude's a lunatic. It doesn't make you a better person. It's not like they go through this system and go, oh man, I've learned a new respect for... No. A lot of people do, but a lot of people seek it out. Nobody's forced to go to jiu-jitsu, right? In my own personal experience with police and military, it's been a mixed bag. Some have been absolutely great and wonderful. Some have that, what they call command presence, where they always need to be in charge of everything, and they don't want to listen. And they go too hard at everything. And they don't like it when a little tiny blue belt beats them up, and typically they don't make it. So the things that, I remember sparring with a cop one time in jiu-jitsu, and we started as a deputy, and we started out, and he went right after me. He's like a white belt, and I was a blue or purple belt at the time, and he went at me hard. I'm like, oh, okay. Flipped him, submitted him, flipped him, submitted him. God, it must be 10 times in 5 minutes I submitted the guy. And by the end, he's all dead and he can't breathe and all this stuff. And I was like, I said, slow down and learn, dude. Slow down and learn. Like, take a deep breath. You're not a badass here. You're not anything special. You're a fucking white belt. You don't know anything. Take yourself down and learn. And I've had to do that a lot with cops and military, in my experience. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Where, I remember sparring with this Navy SEAL guy. And he came at me like it was a street fight, and I beat the dog piss out of him. And every time I hit him, he got more and more angry because he's kind of like used to being the badass in the room. Like, I'm a SEAL, I can do it. He's like, dude, you don't know how to kickbox. Like, you may have done some kickboxing, but like, it's that humility and being able to go like, I'm not the shit. I got to step down and learn and be humble. And if you don't have that in you, nothing, you're not going to be open to being taught. And nothing I teach you is going to stick anyway. So it's not a cure-all. I'm not against, obviously, law enforcement professionals learning jiu-jitsu or anything like that. If especially if they get something out of them, they're willing to learn and try it. I think it's a great thing. But the idea that this act of teaching them or imposing this on them, and I want to make that very, very clear. If it's part of your training and you have to do it, it's very different than someone who says, I want to try this new thing. I want to be humbled at this new thing. I want to learn this new martial art. Maybe this would be good for me. If you make somebody do it, that spiritual side of it, that character side of it, it's never going to happen. You're going to have an asshole who's a black belt. You're going to have a bully who's a black belt. You're going to have a, whatever negative personality trait they walked in with, that's what they're going to walk out with. And unless that changes, that fundamentally changes, nothing's going to change. And so that was initially what I thought about that whole movement. Oh, they need to learn jiu-jitsu. I was like, well, You can break a shoulder a lot easier if you know jiu-jitsu. If you're inclined to hurt somebody, if you're inclined to beat somebody down, if you're inclined to choke somebody out, you're just going to be better at it. Jiu-jitsu is a weapon, and a weapon is a tool. It can be used properly, or it can be used improperly. A cop who uses his firearm and shoots a running person in the back who's unarmed doesn't not know how the gun works. It's not like he needs more firearms training. He knew exactly how the gun worked. It worked very, very well. He misapplied that. And all the jiu-jitsu classes and all the firearms classes in the world aren't going to change that. And that's something I think a lot of people are overlooking. It doesn't make you a Zen master having years and years of jiu-jitsu. It runs the gamut. And anyone who's been in jiu-jitsu for a long time can tell you that. There are plenty of people that have jiu-jitsu black belts that you guys know very, very well that I wouldn't want anywhere near my house. So there are a lot of solutions, and I think jiu-jitsu might be a part of it, but it's a cultural and character change that needs to happen. And that is much more difficult than tying a gi for an hour. So hopefully things develop and change for the better. So anyway, appreciate you guys. I'll be back after the next fight. Later.